Welcome, dear listeners. I'm Jonathan Carlin.
And I'm Benjamin Carlin.
And we invite you to join us through the Griffin door, your one-way ticket to the enchanting world of Harry Potter. So grab your wands and dust off your broomsticks and join us as we unlock the riddles inside Goblet of Fire, Chapter 3, The Invitation.
Oh boy, the invitation.
Mm-hmm. I love the chapter art for this chapter.
I know. I feel like we got to kick off with it right away because I think we missed it in last week's episode.
Oh.
For the what was it?
For the scar?
Yeah, I know. Just too bad.
You get like a canonical look at the scar.
You do. Yep, I know. So anyway, but I love this one because it is like Mrs. Weasley. And I think last year we had the Felly tone. Is that when that happened, or was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, where Ron calls and is like yelling.
Yes, yeah. So once again, you've got the Weasleys just doing their absolute darndest to adopt Muggle culture. And they have blanketed this letter with stamps.
Is it not like a little surprising they're not like a little better at it? like because Arthur works in the misuse of Muggle artifacts department, and you'd think he would have an outstanding in Muggle studies. It feels like a class in Muggle studies should be like, write a letter to a Muggle.
Yeah, right.
Know?
Yes, yeah. We're going to use regular post.
Regular mail. Things that are different but that we can accomplish. Address an envelope.
It's funny because I think there's also going to be a scene later on in this very book where Arthur has to ask Harry for help with like Muggle money because he just can't figure out like which one is which. And he's like, oh, that's right. I see it there. There's a 5 on that one. And it's like, you know your numbers,
right? You know your numbers, though,
yeah,
right?
I mean, it feels pretty fundamental.
Like if you don't know how to use Muggle artifacts, how are you supposed to identify when they're being misused?
That's a good point,
right?
Yeah. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure we have seen in past chapter arts, and I mean, I know that we're obviously splitting hairs here, and this is not like necessarily canonical, but we have seen. I think it's the letter from Sirius at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban. There is a stamp.
Oh, there's a stamp on it.
Yeah.
Which like you don't need. They don't need stamps
to
mail owls, especially when the owl is a wild owl. It's not like you went to the post office and they're like, can I borrow this?
Right,
or
yes.
Can I rent the owl?
Where you might need to be like paying the associated fee for whatever care and upkeep is required for the owl. But either way, I think it's adorable. I also love the fact that they are very different stamps, which I appreciate because I can't go so far as to say I'm like a deep lover of stamps, but like whenever I go to the post office, I'll always go up to the counter and be like, what do y'all got today?
Yeah.
Like, you got any good ones I can maybe pick up? So I do have a bizarre collection of, I mean, I'm not a collector, but I have a bizarre collection of stamps.
Yes. Very good. Very good. I do love as well that the very nature of it being covered in stamps means that Mrs. Weasley had to go to a Muggle post office to purchase all of the stamps.
Yes.
At which point, like, she obviously chose several different varieties, had to go through the entire process of the, like, wizard Muggle currency exchange rate.
Right.
But, like, at no point did it occur to her to ask, like, what is the purpose of stamps? It's like, from their point of view, it's like, when Muggles send mail, they put stickers on it.
Right. Well, we should make sure we put enough so it gets there safely.
I hope I put enough stamps on. Like, the point of it isn't to like represent that you paid to mail the letter. It's just that like when you mail letters, you put stamps on it.
This is part of culture.
Part of culture, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's really funny. I think it reminds me of a scene in Ted Lasso where he goes to like an American bar in England.
Yeah.
And it's like hilarious. And I'm sure that this is the case with so many things where somebody outside of a culture is attempting to represent a culture, but they've leaned way too far into the stereotypes.
Yes.
And it's like, you're not quite getting it. Which, I think maybe that's a degree of what's happening here as well.
Yeah,
she's
yes.
She's trying.
She's
her
trying
best.
so hard. I know she has so many like faux pas in this letter, which I'm sure we will get to here in a second. But for the moment, that's the chapter art. Let's just dive on into the chapter.
Let's do it, yeah, because we're now kind of getting our first glimpse into life at the Dursleys,
Yes.
which I think is it's very important, and I've brought it up so many times throughout the series, but it goes to demonstrate just how bad Harry's life is there.
Yes.
Like it's like a weird kind of like stakes that are like established as to like why it is so important that Harry is able to go reside at wizard school.
Yes, it is. So this is going to be a big like Dursley update chapter, and just as a reminder, we're coming out of chapter 2, The Scar, where Harry has been dealing with the fallout of having witnessed the first chapter, the Riddle House, where he was watching Voldemort murder Frank Bryce, and then he wakes up from the terrible sweat, has to decide what he's going to do about it, and now this is just the very next morning. So like you're kind of going from like, wow, Harry's having a real like traumatic nightmare situation right into a living nightmare situation.
Yes, yeah. And I think that like the line that's like so hard to read from the last chapter, and just to kind of give you that additional context of like what might be going through Harry's mind here, because it says Harry kneaded his forehead with his knuckles. What he really wanted, and it felt almost shameful to admit to himself, was someone like a parent.
Yes.
And, so you have to imagine that this is a 14-year-old who has woken up from a nightmare that very well could be real in the middle of the night. And then he goes downstairs to the adults that reside in the house with him. And this is the opening line for the Dursleys. By the time Harry arrived in the kitchen, the three Dursleys were already seated around the table. None of them looked up as he entered or sat down.
Right.
And it's like, it's ridiculous that this child is longing for anyone who can step in and be like the strong person in the room on his behalf.
Right.
A completely reasonable expectation of someone at this age, and yet this is what he's met with, which is why it's so like
right.
He doesn't even know how to expect that to be there. That's why it feels shameful for him to admit it, like, because it's like he doesn't have it.
Well, but it's like this. Yeah, I think that's like the point of this chapter, is to remind you just like how isolated Harry is. It's like he can't really talk about the wizarding world, and maybe you could understand the Dursleys like being kind of like at odds with it. But like now you're at a situation where like Harry has effectively witnessed murder through the eyes of the devil. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like even now he cannot like even confide this like worst of scenarios to his caretakers.
Right.
Like such is the distance between them. And it's like that has got to feel so isolating when it's like something as bad as this is happening to you and you still can't speak up about it at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, everybody talks about, in Order of the Phoenix, how Harry goes on to sort of be like your classic 15-year-old who's sort of like misunderstood. And it's like, yeah, because he is misunderstood. Like, like who is going through that and not getting the proper attention, even if you were an adult, when you came downstairs, other adults would be like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Let's stop what we're doing. Let's stop reading the Daily Mail and quartering this grapefruit.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Which is what they're doing.
Which is what they are doing. So also, this is one of those things that I never would have noticed. And if you're not reading it, it says Uncle Vernon's large red face was hidden behind the morning's Daily Mail. But Daily Mail is in italics and capitalized. And I've always just listened to it and assumed he's just like already reading the mail.
Oh,
which actually doesn't make sense because the mail's about to come. But like you don't know that as you're reading this, so it just sounds like he's like reading the Daily Mail.
Oh,
but,
that's a good point. Yeah,
But the Daily Mail is the name of the newspaper.
Right.
Yes,
it is the Muggle version of the Daily Prophet.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's see here. And so basically what we know is that the Dursleys have also adopted what has been known to be a rather like kind of fad diet, I think, through various decades throughout the years, the grapefruit diet.
The grapefruit diet.
Something I largely know about because of the Weird Al Yankovic song by the same name.
Grapefruit diet.
Diet.
Yeah, what do you know about the grapefruit diet?
What I read about the grapefruit diet is that you were, I believe, supposed to incorporate grapefruit into each meal, and it like unscientifically is supposed to help you lose an amount of weight, I think like up to 10 pounds in 10 days or something like that. But there is no verification that it works, and I think it's generally frowned upon as a practice.
Oh, okay.
So what do you know about a grapefruit diet?
I wouldn't have known anything. I never assumed. You know what? As you're mentioning the Weird Al song, it's occurring to me that it might be more of a widespread thing. I was just sort of like, yep, they're just eating very little food.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a sparse amount of food.
Right.
But no, this was a popular thing. I think I was reading the Wikipedia page for it, so forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was very popular in like either the 20s or 30s, and then it like sprang back up, I think somewhere around like the 80s, and sort of had like its little stint of popularity.
Okay.
So it could be the case that what's happening here is that like the Dursleys are like kind of like, because this is 1994 in their years, so it's almost like they're picking up a diet that's almost like kind of 10-ish, 15 years.
Oh, all right. Well, here's my theory on it then. The reason the grapefruit diet, quote unquote, may or may not unscientifically work is that if you eat half a grapefruit with no like sugar or anything on it, it will just curb your appetite because it doesn't taste good. And you'll have suffered through it
and
to
you're
that
like,
point.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm pretty much just done eating. You know what? I'm done.
That's enough.
That's enough.
This is because you're not a fan of grapefruit.
I'm not a fan of. Well, I mean, like grapefruit has its place. Fresca is where grapefruits belong, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you like a carbonated beverage with like a hint of grapefruit nearby.
Yeah. Well, like I wouldn't even say like Pamplemousse LaCroix.
Yeah.
No good.
Oh no, I like that one.
Nope.
Yep.
Don't like that one. But Fresca, that's where it's at.
Okay.
I didn't even know it was grapefruit for a long time when I finally read the can. It was like grapefruit, and then I had to like really focus in. I was like, it is. This is the best application of grapefruit in the world.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
I like grapefruit scented things.
Grapefruit scent. That's a good use for it as well.
Yep. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm not somebody. My wife Alice will eat a grapefruit for breakfast, but I won't. So, anyway, let's see here.
We're gonna be reminded over and over and over in this chapter about the size of Dudley.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
like the weird kind of like I think. I mean, he's a large kid, but it is much more representative of like a certain kind of neglect on the side of his parents.
I think that's exactly what's going on, because we're even going to have a line here, I think that like talks about how like Petunia even goes out of her way to make sure that the piece of grapefruit quarter, it says, she now passed the grapefruit quarter to Harry. He noticed that it was a lot smaller than Dudley's. And I think that like we're going to see it even again later on when it comes to the invitation itself. But it's like, I think so often the Dursleys are so determined to create disparity between how Dudley is treated and how Harry is treated, that you're exactly right. And Dumbledore will even bring it up, I think, in Half-Blood Prince, like where he's like the only thing I can be grateful for is that Harry hasn't suffered the neglect as the boy sitting between you two right now. And I think it's like anything that's going on with Dudley right now is a failing of Petunia and Vernon.
Right, because like, yeah, you're right. Like in their effort to mistreat Harry, they like overcorrect on both boys.
Exactly.
Right, where they just like overcorrect Dudley into like this other weird kind of abuse, which is like the spoiling of him and the overeating and the like, oh, we need to treat you so extra more than Harry, that like they're unaware of like the negative impacts it's having on Dudley.
Exactly.
Whereas that at the same time they're like and like they want to treat Dudley in their minds extra good to like represent to Harry how much they don't like him. And then at the same time they want to treat Harry poorly to show Dudley how much they do like him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that like, I think Dudley so existed in this world his whole life that like, I think again, when you go back to that scene in Half-Blood Prince, like all three of the Dursleys are confused. Like, when was Dudley ever mistreated?
Right.
I think, and it's like, they don't understand it at all.
At all.
But any onlooker is like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
I see what's happened here. Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're gonna have here. But yeah, Dudley, there's like a whole description here about like it sounds like all of their attitudes toward Dudley is not rubbing off very well at school, where he's gotten like a bad report where there are reports of bullying. He has bad grades, and they no longer make clothes big enough for him.
Yes, yeah. So what I thought was kind of funny is we just recently made a video breaking down the Slytherin paradox.
Yeah.
And inside of that video, we were talking about in the early days of like the sorting quiz on Pottermore, when you were allocated into your specific house, you would have a prefect from each house sort of like send you a letter that sort of like gave you like a sense or feel of like how you were to be like welcomed into that house.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a particular term that is used when describing like Slytherin's own perspective in their superiority. This is back, I think, in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, it was like right when Pottermore came out, like the letter you'd get from the Slytherin prefect welcoming you to the house.
Yes, but did they not use the term SWAT?
Yeah.
SWOT
Yes.
to refer to
the Ravenclaws.
To the Ravenclaws. And the idea there is that they're like overly bookish, and why would you want to be that type of thing? And I guess this is a term in England.
Yeah, that basically just means like it's like a derogatory term for someone who like takes their studies too seriously.
Yes, but I thought it was funny because I had never really paid attention to that term before. And when it's talking about Dudley's poor grades, it says Aunt Petunia always insisted that Dudley was a very gifted boy whose teachers didn't understand him, while Uncle Vernon maintained that he didn't want some swatty little Nancy boy for a son anyway.
I know, I highlighted that as well. I was like, but like you like want him to be smart still, right? Like
surely even you can value intelligence.
Right, like you have a job where you have to make deals. I've seen you organize dinners. You know, like you had a well thought out strategy that was likely to work if not for the intervention of one Daubert the house elf.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. It's like, surely you consider yourself smart,
right,
Vernon.
Right. Like,
right.
You'd think. I mean, by all accounts, he seems good at his job.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But anyway, yeah. So again, it's just sort of like it's kind of not paying attention to any of the other things.
Yeah, even the line, it's like he's a boisterous little boy, but he wouldn't learn to fly. Like I underline that. It's like that line is like such ignorance.
Yes.
Like, yeah, determined not to see the writing on the wall.
Right. Especially because what we're going to know will happen with Dudley over the next year is that he will take up boxing as a like physical outlet or whatever. And it's like he is engaging in at least what is otherwise known as a rather violent centered sport.
The noble sport.
The noble sport of boxing. As Vernon will refer to it as. Anyway.
You know when Jake Paul was entering the arena the other night to fight Mike Tyson, I couldn't help. I was just like, such nobility. So I have no other words for this slow motion entrance except nobility.
Nobility. Yeah, I think to me
and he's in the ring. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was whatever Axe body spray that Logan Paul was spritzing all over him for the entire entry. That that's what really sent it over the top.
That's what it really did. You know. Yeah. Solid.
Look at us being topical.
Hey, we watched a thing on the Netflix at dial-up internet speeds. It was great.
People years from now are gonna be like, what?
What on earth happened? You guys no, Ben, it was a moment in history, right? Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
The definite high point of that night.
It wasn't.
It was not.
Anyway, back to our book here. Let's see here. We've got, I think that, Harry sort of having a much more objective perspective on things is kind of observing the fact that while Aunt Petunia's eyes were so sharp when it came to spotting fingerprints on her gleaming wall, and in observance of the comings and goings of the neighbor, simply refused to see that like Dudley has basically picked up all of these sort of attributes along the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then as we scoot forward, we get like a little bit more. We get a diet sheet that has been sent by Smeltings.
Yes, I highlighted that as well because I was like, you know what? I always think of like, because the Dursleys are like pro Smeltings, that it's probably very snobby and like kind of up their alley. But like clearly it's not. It's just like it Smeltings, even though there must be some uppityness to it, like does care about their students.
Right. Yes, they are like rejecting what the Dursleys are presenting in the form of Dudley.
Right. They're like diet sheet. Yes.
Yes.
Here you go. From the school.
So maybe I can't completely fault Vernon and Petunia, though, for the selection of the grapefruit diet.
Right.
If the diet sheet has been sent by Smeltings.
That's true. Maybe they're the ones who prescribed to the grapefruit diet.
Maybe they did indeed.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see here.
It's interesting too, the description of their fridge, where it says like it had been empty and involved Dudley's favorite things: fizzy drinks, cakes, chocolate bars, and burgers, and filled instead with fruits, vegetables, and the sorts of things Uncle Vernon called rabbit food. And I'm like, okay, so like I understand that Dudley has like not been eating well, but like you just didn't even own fruits and vegetables like at all. Like you're stocking cake. You have cakes all the time.
The one that got me was the burgers.
The burgers.
Yeah, it's like I mean, this feels like the type of thing like in a cartoon you could like open the fridge and just see like a row of burgers, maybe.
Yeah.
But like at no point in time do I ever just have burgers like ready
in the fridge.
Like,
I know.
just in case I want to pop one out and have a burger.
Because like whilst Vernon and Dudley both seem to be like bigger gentlemen, like Petunia is always described as like stick figure.
Right.
So it's like is this what's she eating most of the time? If this is what's normally in their fridge.
This is a good question.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know.
Rabbit
Don't know.
food.
Rabbit food.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know. It's interesting that like at large for the last 13 years at least, that they have just sort of not had a good diet at all for the whole family.
The real question to me is always just like, what would Dudley have been like if Harry wasn't there to create this contrast?
Oh, I know, yeah.
Because I mean, even going off my smaller grapefruit quarter I mentioned earlier, but the next line actually reads, Aunt Petunia seemed to feel that the best way to keep up Dudley's morale was to make sure that he did at least get more to eat than Harry.
Right.
And it's like, how far back does this go, and what does Dudley's life look like if it's not for Harry's being there?
Right.
In that case, it's like presumably you have two parents who just love their child, and I mean they do seem to, poor tactics aside, they do seem to very much love Dudley.
Right. Yeah. That I don't think is in question. And you're like, they don't seem to want anything to do with like Lily or James or anything, but at least it's not like in the house, I guess.
Right.
And it's like now that Harry is there, they like feel like they need to do something about it. But
yes.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a little better off. Maybe still not a great kid. But
right.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So then the kind of fun thing though is that Harry has like a little bit more empowerment when it comes to his relationship with the Dursleys.
Yes.
Compared to what he's been able to do in the past, where I think at the beginning of Chamber of Secrets, it's kind of like a key point that like the Dursleys don't know that he's not allowed to do magic outside of school, and then the whole incident happens with Dobby, which then sort of like reveals to them that this is in fact a problem. And then last year, all of his stuff has been like locked away, but then Aunt Marge is just so ridiculously rude to Harry that like the magic kind of explodes,
bursts out of him.
Yep. But it seems like at this point in time, especially in part thanks to the fact that Harry has brought up that Sirius is out there and is his godfather and wants to make sure that he is okay, Harry is like entitled to more of his things, and Hedwig is permitted to go out on trips.
Yes.
And so he has like communication with the outside world. So when it says the moment that Harry caught wind of the fact that he was expected to survive all summer on carrot sticks, Harry had said to Hedwig to his friend with pleas for help, and they had risen to the occasion magnificently.
It says magnificently, but then proceeds to like list the ways in which they have failed him.
The whole next like half a page is a little contradictory in more way than one.
Yeah.
Yes, because they had risen to the occasion magnificently, which is just to say that they tried. Hermione Hedwig had returned from Hermione's house with a large box stuffed full of sugar-free snacks. Hermione's parents were dentists, which it doesn't explicitly say that these aren't good snacks.
It doesn't say that. You're right. Just
yeah.
that they're sugar-free. So perhaps these are still good. And I'm not sure like what was Harry hoping for. It's just like specifically sugar-free.
Yes.
Like I feel like it says sugar-free on the box.
Right. Yeah. So then we have Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper. Let me try that again. Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, had obliged with a sack full of his own homemade rock cakes.
Yeah.
Harry hadn't touched these. He had too much experience with Hagrid's cooking.
Right. So less magnificent.
Less magnificent basically just means that Hagrid sent what is probably a heavy package back with Hedwig.
Yeah.
That is not being touched, unfortunately. And then it seems like Mrs. Weasley really came through.
Yeah, Mrs. Weasley, the real hero here. Surprise, surprise.
Okay, this lone word means that the rest of the packages were less good. Mrs. Weasley, however,
yes.
which is to say, in contrast to, had sent the family owl Errol with an enormous fruitcake and assorted meat pies.
Yes, real food, sort of. I mean, the fruitcake is still more like maybe a treat, I assume. But like the assorted meat pies, I'm like, you have food, you have protein.
Yes, yeah, there we go, yeah. Because otherwise, Harry is feeding off of what sounds like Dudley's old fridge contents himself. But then it follows up with, and then on Harry's birthday, which the Dursleys had completely ignored, he had received 4 superb birthday cakes, one each from Ron, Hermione, Hagrid, and Sirius.
Yeah.
So he's referring to it as a superb cake. However, he had literally just mentioned that Harry hadn't touched the rock cakes because he had too much experience of Hagrid's cooking.
Yeah.
So maybe Hagrid's baking is a completely different category from Hagrid's cooking.
I mean, I guess I would have always thought rock cakes was a form of baking.
I would have agreed.
We also know that Hagrid does make a good cake vis-a-vis his entry into Harry's life.
The chocolate cake with
the chocolate cake
and green lettering.
Yeah, that one.
It makes me want cake every time I think about it.
It is such a good-looking cake.
It is.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. I actually made that one for my wife for her birthday this year.
You did. It was great. So yeah, I guess Hagrid sends a much better cake than he does rock cakes. So Harry goes upstairs and says Harry still had 2 of them left, and so looking forward to a real breakfast when he got back upstairs. He ate his grapefruit without complaint. And I'm like, when I read that, I'm always like, well, but like living off of cake is still not going to be that comfortable for very long.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, and maybe this is like one of those instances where it's like a mind over matter thing. Like Harry's kind of used to being hungry, like because of the Dursleys, and so maybe he's just sort of like, you know what? At least I have some agency over what happens next.
Right. That's true. That's true. That is going to be a big part of this chapter for sure, as Uncle Vernon is going to have several like existential crises to deal with. But we'll get to those. Anyway, Vernon himself is looking down at the grapefruit and says, "Is this it?" He said grumpily, and I highlighted that because like he's a big guy too, and I bet he is very grumpy these days.
I mean, honestly, like I am a rather small lad by I think and like if I have like a lone banana for breakfast myself, then come lunchtime I'm hangering.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like it's a bad combination for Harry that Dudley has to be on this diet and everyone else has to do it, because I feel like it's just making them all very hungry and irritable, which is such a side effect of hunger. Yeah. So not great for Harry, but he is called to the door to get the actual mail, where he has a short conversation with the mailman and then comes back and has to talk to Harry, looking livid.
Yes. The thing I like about it is that he comes back from the mailman and he says, he barked at Harry, "in the living room now." Yeah. To which I was like, no, the kitchen is just simply no place for punishments.
No place.
It's like, we can't do this here.
Can't do this here.
This is where grapefruit is consumed.
Exactly.
Yes, this is a living room conversation.
Right, private. I don't want anyone else to know. He doesn't even want like Petunia and Dudley to know that like magic has entered the house in some way.
Well, I mean, and that paranoia is very real. Like, I think while he's going to be talking to Harry, it's going to specifically mention that like his eyes are shifting to the windows as if somebody could be like peering in, listening to this very conversation.
Right. Yeah, they probably are, yeah.
Like, it would be exhausting to live this way.
Oh my gosh, I know. To be like assuming that like at any moment, like, oh my gosh, the neighbors are probably looking in. We need to keep our voices down lest the people next door overhear what we're talking about.
Yes.
Like, like in your regular days when you're like, guess I'll just go put my ear to the window and see if I can overhear the neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
No, yes, precisely. It's like, I mean, we've all done it, right?
all
and
done
stood
it.
outside our neighbors' houses.
We all carve out time every day to make sure that we nosily know what the neighbors are up to.
Exactly. Worst case scenario is that you look across the street back at your own home and see that they're standing outside your window while you're standing outside their window.
I know. It's just like, yeah, we're all watching each other. We're on the same page. Good. Keep it in check, neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, but they are petrified of people figuring this out. And it's like, also, it's such unfounded worry, too, because it's like, even if they overheard them talking about magic, like, if you don't know about wizards, that's not going to be your first, like, thought. It's not going to be like, wait a minute, they were talking about magic. Are wizards real and they have one?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You're right. Yeah. It's like the belief that people will be able to jump to that conclusion just based on overhearing like the single word magic,
right,
or wizard, or wand, or broomstick,
like Hogwarts. You know?
Yeah. It's like probably like we go back to like Frank. It's like when he heard those words, he had to jam his finger rather forcefully into his earwax infested ear.
Exactly.
To be like, Quidditch wasn't a word.
Yeah, right? Whatever. It's just like he assumes he misheard more than anything.
Yeah.
Which is a normal response. But either way, Harry is just like sitting at the kitchen table like, oh, God, what did I do now?
Right, yes. I am merely sitting here eating my grapefruit in peace.
Yeah. Let me get to there and like Uncle Vernon is so flustered. He's just like, so. Harry's like, so what?
It's like, what's the haps here, sir? Yeah. So, but Harry is aware of the fact that Vernon's temperature shouldn't be tested this early in the morning, especially when he's under severe strain from the lack of food. So he therefore settled for looking politely puzzled.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that Molly doesn't write the letter to Harry; she writes it to Uncle Vernon. So, because it's a letter about you.
That's true. You're right. You're right. Yep. Let's see here.
Also, like, this is another one where Harry's confusion is like all over the place. Who would be writing to the Dursleys about him? I was like, Harry, it's got to be like one of two people. It's like it's either Dumbledore or the Weasleys. Like, who else writes to you?
Right.
You know?
Yes. We do
Nobody.
We do have a limited pool. Dobby, maybe.
Dobby sending letters. Yeah. Who knows? Who
Sirius
knows?
Black.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's just sending him a letter. Just wanted to let you know I'm walking around the house.
Oh man. Then you definitely can like understand the extent to which Molly is just so drastically different from the Dursleys, because it says, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, we have never been introduced, but I am sure that you have heard a great deal from Harry about my son Ron."
Oh, I know. Such faith that deep down the Dursleys must be good people enough to have talked to Harry about his friend.
Yes. It's
Right.
like tremendously low bar.
Tremendously low bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, as Harry might have told you, the final of the Quidditch World Cup takes place this Monday night, and my husband Arthur has just managed to get prime tickets through his connections at the Department of Magical Games and Sports, which I highlighted that whole thing and underlined the and my husband Arthur, because I feel like this reminds me so much of when Arthur gets promoted, I think, is it in Order of the Phoenix? And Molly's like bursting at the seams to be like, Arthur's been promoted.
Yeah.
It's like to me, this is like one of those moments where it's like Molly is like bragging on her husband in like the most endearing way.
Yeah.
You know, she's just like, my husband was able to get tickets. You know, it's like it's such a big moment for her.
Yeah. As ever, I'm just gonna vent about the prime ticket situation.
Okay. Lay it on us, Jay.
Okay, here we go. This is, what day of the week is this? Like, I don't know. The Quidditch World Club is taking place on Monday night. This is like what, Saturday? Maybe like a few days beforehand. Do we know?
I think it's a Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
I feel like that is the case because I feel like. Hold on. If we go back to the beginning of when Harry woke up, I feel like it talks about like the faint misty orange light that was filtering through the street lamp window from outside. No, I thought that it said on a Saturday morning, but maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I think Ron is going to send him a letter as well and say like we'll be there at 5 o'clock on Sunday anyway, and then he writes back and says something like I'll see you tomorrow or something.
Okay.
See you 5 o'clock tomorrow. Yeah. So today is Saturday. Sunday they're picking him up. Monday is the Quidditch World Cup. But here's the thing: is that Molly is saying in her letter that my husband just got tickets, and like Ron is going to say in his letter too, Dad got tickets.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
this is breaking news.
This is breaking news, and like so as of like what Friday? Did they even know they were going to the Quidditch World Cup? Like, don't think so.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because the letter must have been in transit for some amount of time.
But like Harry is going to send the letter back to Ron, assuming it'll get to him before Sunday at 5 o'clock.
Well, that's true. But I mean, and to be fair, it's possible that the letter through the post was expedited due to the fact that there was like
I know they were like
$15 worth of postage.
I know they're like we got to get this fast.
Yeah, it's like I don't mean, somebody needs it.
That's true, but it can't have been for more than like 5 days or so that they have known they're even going to it. And she says, my husband's able to secure prime seats. Underselling it a bit, if you ask me. Like, not just prime seats, like the best seats in the entire stadium,
yes,
effectively.
In the top box, next to the person who is announcing it and the Minister for Magic.
Yes. Unbelievable that, like, less than a week out, they get 10 tickets to the prime seats, which are still available. By the way,
and nobody
still available.
Too expensive.
100,000 people coming. The Bulgarian ministers of magic are going to be in that box. Do you think this is like a box you're taking care of a lot?
Yes.
But nope. 10 vacant seats.
10 vacant seats
to be given out to anyone. To just 5 days before the event.
Yeah.
Not accounted for.
Not accounted for, none whatsoever. And all in thanks to the fact that Arthur was able to get Ludo Bagman's brother,
Otto,
off on a lawnmower emergency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Apparently, just, I don't know. What did Otto Bagman do to the lawnmower?
Well, what could this thing have been doing? How many people's lives were endangered?
I know.
Many, maybe at least 10. One ticket for each person who we saved.
Yeah.
Anyway, yep. So that is what happened. Approximately tens of thousands of dollar repayment.
Yes. Apparently.
Least in the value of the tickets being handed out here.
Well, because she even goes on to say, like, I do hope you allow us to take Harry to the match. This is really a once in a lifetime opportunity. Also very true. Britain hasn't hosted the cup for 30 years, and tickets are extremely hard to come by. Which I'm like, are they? Are they hard to come by? Because there's 100,000 people there, and it hardly sounds like there's 100,000 wizards in Europe.
Well, that's also true.
How hard is it to get tickets to this thing?
We don't know.
We don't know.
The thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the 30 years is I feel like this could be, because there's two major things that's happening here. If you go back 30 years, you're going back to the year 1964, which would be before Voldemort's rise to power for the first time.
Yeah.
Because this would be like when James was James himself, I think, would have been like 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
So just a child. And I think it's kind of interesting because it's like, that means that like Britain hosting the World Cup and the return of the Tri-Wizard Tournament, to me, are both major indicators that Fudge has like fully bought on the idea that Voldemort is gone, which I think is probably also part of like what is going to cause such tremendous resistance to the idea that he could be back. Because Fudge, you know, from his perspective, he's like, this year is going to be great. I've brought back the Quidditch World Cup to Britain. I've brought back the Tri-Wizard Tournament to Hogwarts. Like, great things are happening.
Yeah. I mean, would you say it's down to Fudge or more like Crouch?
I mean, the administration, if you will.
Right.
Yes, the current acting powers are doing things that are all things that you would do during peacetime.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Lots of sports.
Lots of fun. Lots of, you know, interest and recreation. Yeah.
Right. Tourism. All those things. So Mrs. Weasley continues that it would be best for Harry to send your answer as quickly as possible in the normal way because the Muggle postman has never delivered to our house, and I'm not even sure he knows where it is. Which I love that. The normal way. Like, come on, Mrs. Weasley. Even for you, maybe a little tactless.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Our normal way.
Our normal way. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Maybe
yeah.
that's the way to say it. Then the postscript. I do hope we put enough stamps on, which I just love that. I love the even as she's done it, she's like, I don't know, this might not make it.
We're flirting with danger here.
We're flirting with, I should have gotten a bigger envelope.
I know. Yeah, right. I love Harry's response because Vernon is going to hold up the letter, which I can only imagine looks exactly like the chapter art, and it says every bit of it was covered in stamps except for a square inch on the front onto which Miss Weasley had squeezed the Dursleys' address in minute writing. And then Harry says, she did put enough stamps on then.
Got him.
Said Harry, trying to sound as though Mrs. Weasley's was a mistake anyone can make.
Yes.
His uncle's eyes flashed.
Oh, man. I love his response. The postman noticed. Very interested to know where this letter came from, he was. To which I'm like, that's why he rang the doorbell. Seemed to think it was funny. Which, one, it is funny. But two, what a nosy postman. Like, what business is it of yours?
I know, yeah. But I do think that is quite inappropriate. But I love the phrasing, seemed to think it was funny.
Yeah.
And to which I was like, I love how not funny it is to Vernon.
Yeah.
Like, no part of him is getting a chuckle out of this.
Nope.
Because if this happened to me, I'd be like, this is incredible.
Oh, I know.
Like,
It'd be hilarious.
I would keep it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine, like, what if, I mean, not that she ever would, but if, like, Aunt Marge sent him a letter covered in stamps like this, what would he think?
What would he do?
Would he be like, having a laugh?
Ate another funny whelk.
I know, right?
Classic Marge.
Classic Marge. What a hoot. Said no one ever.
Yeah.
Oh,
literally.
man.
She is the worst.
Yes, but this brings Vernon into his first internal crisis of the chapter, where his fundamental instincts come into conflict, where he is trying to decide whether he should let Harry go to the Quidditch World Cup because that'll make him happy, and obviously he doesn't want to do that, but it would get him out of the house, which would make himself happy, and he does want to do that. And the fact that he is having such a difficult time making this decision like speaks volumes about the Dursleys, because it means that in his brain the act of making Harry's life miserable is just as good to him as Harry not being there.
I know.
It is like
yeah. I mean, but this is exactly what I was talking about, like with Dudley before, where it's like is Dudley being treated the way that he is treated because that is how they would always do it, or is it because it brings them as much joy to spoil Dudley as it is to neglect Harry?
Yeah.
And so it's like they need to do as much as possible, create as much distance between how those two things are represented as humanly possible.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is properly absurd.
Yes.
But it is kind of funny just to imagine Vernon basically boiling inside because he can't decide between these two things.
I
Because
know.
It's like it's its own kind of suffering. That's like, if you could just be a better person, the obvious answer is right there.
Right. Just like let him go, then you don't have to deal with him, and he's like, and he'll have fun. It's like an absolute win-win.
It is.
It is. Except he's like, but I'd really prefer if you could not be here and we're like in prison or something. You
Right,
know,
yes,
that would.
yes.
Is there an option for that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Well, I mean, because it sounds like it's like, I don't like the sound of these top box seats. It sounds it sounds a little bit too, what do we call them? Prime tickets.
Prime
It's like,
tickets.
If they were nosebleeds, maybe, you know. But
Jokes on him. Nosebleed tickets would probably be pretty good at the Quidditch World Cup.
yeah, because
it's
everything
just, like,
happens
up
so
really high. Yeah. Right.
We really don't want the Quidditch World Cup as floor seats.
Yeah, you don't want floor seats. She's gonna stare up the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Or look at Hussan Mustafar.
Yeah. That'd be so funny if you were like imagine Hermione's parents like trying like in reverse to be like, okay, like while she's off at school, they're like, Hermione keeps telling us about that Quidditch World Cup. Should we like try and surprise her and get tickets?
Yeah. We got
Like,
front row tickets.
I know. It's like, we got front row, center court.
Yeah. It's like
on the goal line.
they only cost a knut.
I know. I couldn't believe the deal. And they get there, and it's like, oh, I
Oh,
see.
man.
These are the worst tickets here. Yeah, far away from both goals, 50 feet down. Man. I'm sorry, Hermione. She's like, never mind. Don't worry, Dad. I got tickets in the top box. Have fun down there, losers.
Because that's what Hermione would
That's
say.
how Hermione treats her parents, probably. Yeah.
I mean, there is a certain amount of Hermione does not go home, but for like 8 total weeks.
Oh, I
from-
know.
Yeah.
That's not unlike to Hermione to be like, oh, yeah, Mom and Dad came. I abandoned them at their seats. Yeah.
They're down there.
They're down there as usual.
Oh, Hermione.
Oh, poor Hermione's parents.
Yeah. Anyway, then we through his contemplation, you can just sort of imagine Vernon standing there weighing all of his options, and what he's able to muster is, who is this woman?
Right.
He said, staring at the signature with distaste. And Harry's like, you've seen her. She's my friend Ron's mother. She was meeting him off the school train at the end of last year.
Yeah, good save.
He had almost said Hogwarts Express.
Right.
And was sure that would get his uncle's temper up. And nobody ever mentioned the name of Harry's school aloud in the Dursley household.
Lest anyone overhear them and jump to the obvious conclusion that the Hogwarts Express was a magical train to a magical school, and that means that the Dursleys are housing a wizard.
The natural conclusion.
The natural conclusion.
Of
That can
course.
mean nothing else.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate what Vernon says next, though.
Oh my
which is
gosh.
a dumpy sort of woman.
Oh, I know. I highlighted that and just said, how dare you?
That's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Yes.
And then he said, loads of children with red hair, to which I added, and hand-me-down robes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I love when he says load of children. Like both of these things to him are bad things. Like load of children, which to me suggests that like in his mind, having one child is the appropriate number of children anyone should have.
Yes, I myself have one child and do not share this belief.
I know,
Like,
right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, with red hair, like, oh, they have red hair, do they? As if they could do anything about it.
Right, yeah.
But obviously, that's
Or
not
as
the
if
hair
it's even
color.
a bad thing at all.
That's not the hair color a normal person would have, Ben.
Said Vernon Dursley.
Said Vernon Dursley, yeah. So Harry has to bite back a lot of retorts to that, based on the way Vernon treats his own kids, and then Vernon focuses on a new word, Quidditch. Quidditch, what is this rubbish? And Harry has to explain, it's a sport played on broom, and apparently the word broomstick, a perfectly muggle word itself, is way too much for him.
All right, said Uncle Vernon loudly.
Yes.
Harry saw with some satisfaction that his uncle looked vaguely panicky. Apparently his nerves couldn't stand the sound of the word broomsticks in his living room.
I know, but like even this that like Vernon doesn't know what Quidditch is continues to speak to the like Harry can't even say like his favorite things at Hogwarts. Like he can't even like say it's like no one's asked him like, so what was it like? And he was like, well, there's the sport. I made a team.
Right,
You know?
I'm quite good at.
I'm good at. Yeah, like he can't like none of that. He gets none of it.
Can I show you my broomstick?
Right.
It's really nice.
It's really nice. Yeah. No, don't use it for sweeping. Yeah. Kind of thing.
Oh my gosh. If Harry comes downstairs and continues using his firebolt to sweep the floor.
Right.
Like, no!
No! Although, according to the way it looks in the movie, that's kind of what it looks like he'd use it for.
There we go.
Also, Ben, I just want to point out that as we're talking about broomsticks, that we recently saw the movie Wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has a pretty famous broomstick in it.
It does.
Basically one of the best movies I've ever seen. But I would just like to point out that there's a witch flying on a broomstick. I want to make note that there were no footrests on that broomstick.
Yeah,
you know what? It was perfectly fast.
Honestly, I it was perfectly fast.
And by perfectly fast, I mean Elphaba looks like she is flying way faster than Harry ever flew.
I'm not going to lie to you. One of the things I was thinking about in the back of my mind while watching Elphaba on her broomstick, I was like, oh, this is good news for what Quidditch is going to look like.
It is.
The new series.
What I also really liked, sorry, we're going to tangent about Wicked for a second, is the way in which she, quote, rides the broomstick was like, ride isn't even the right word. She's just holding the broomstick.
Very loosely defined.
Loosely defined riding it. Like she's holding it beneath her. Her body is not resting on it.
No.
She is just, and I mean, she is flying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool broomstick scene in Wicked.
Yes.
With no footrests. Whatever.
You're just gonna keep stirring that pot, huh?
No big deal.
I mean, I can already hear the buzzing coming back. The hornets had died down, Jay.
Nope.
Let it go. Anyway.
Never.
So then Vernon asks, what does she mean the normal way? He spat. Normal for us, said Harry. And before his uncle could stop him, he added, owl post. That's what's normal for wizards. And I was like, wow, he couldn't get through broomstick, but he just spat all this stuff out. I'm like, Harry,
no,
you are playing with fire.
Wizards. I know. And Uncle Vernon's response to the word wizard is basically the same as like every wizard's response to the word Voldemort.
Yes.
Yeah. He's just like, oh, what did you just say? How dare you?
It must not be named.
Yes, yeah. The skill which must not be named.
Yes.
You know what?
This is where it finally says it. Shaking with anger, he shot a nervous look through the window as though expecting to see some of the neighbors with their ears pressed against the glass.
Like neighbors do.
Like neighbors do. We've already been through this.
We've already been through it. This is not a weird concern at all. Do you imagine that like he's caught them doing it before?
I think he's projecting is what's happening, because I think Petunia is the type of person who might be engaging in this behavior, and therefore he assumes everybody else is engaging in this kind of behavior, and I think that's not the case.
I would be surprised if he even knew his neighbor's last name.
Yeah, that's a good point,
right?
too.
But
even that feels so odd. Like, they're living suburban life. Part of suburban life, I think, is getting to know your neighbors and cup of sugar and that type of thing, right? No?
Well, I think even when because you're right, there are times when Harry's Petunia is craning her neck to listen to Mrs. Next Door or something.
Yeah.
But even that phrasing, Mrs. Next Door.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: is that it's it almost feels like they are in opposition to just anything contrary to their specific way of living inside of Number 4 Privet Drive.
Right.
And therefore, it's not like they hate wizards and love muggles. They hate basically anybody who's different from them in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
They're very self-isolating.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't imagine they have many friends.
It doesn't seem that way, especially not the Masons anymore.
Not the Masons.
After the incident.
Yeah.
Even though Dudley wrote that tremendous paper.
I know, about Mr. Mason. His hero.
And all I wrote about you.
Oh, God. What a bar.
Oh, man. Anyway, so let's see here. Then Vernon really tries to kind of back some of his own generosity, really.
Right.
You stand there in the clothes Petunia and I have put on your ungrateful back.
Right. And Harry is not taking it. He's like, only after Dudley finished with them, which is true. It's just hand-me-downs from Dudley, and they're way too big for Harry.
Yep.
Then
Vernon's like, I will not be spoken to like that. But this is where it says, but Harry wasn't going to stand for this. Gone were the days when he'd be forced to take every single one of the Dursleys' stupid rules.
Yes.
And I love that for Harry because, on some level, I think there's a degree of standard growing up involved here, but I also just love that, Harry has enough resources. He has enough measure of self-worth in the situation to be like, no, okay?
Right.
Not
going to stand for this.
Yes, exactly. You don't get to just parade everything over me.
Right, yes. Yeah, and so he knows exactly what to do. He just says, right, can't go. Guess I'm just going to go. I do have to finish a letter to my godfather, though. And that I love this. It says he had done it. He had said the magic words because magic words are exactly what they fear. But
yes.
So in a manner of speaking, these were the magic words.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the perfect selection or usage of the magic words there. And then I like that it says, now he watched the purple recede blotchily from Uncle Vernon's face, making it look like badly mixed black currant ice cream.
Yeah.
Which I highlighted because I was like, that's trivia for you right there.
That is. I highlighted the word blotchily and just wrote good use of blotchily.
Blotchily. So we're not using blotchily nearly enough.
We are not. But start working it into your daily routine, I guess.
Exactly. Yep. Daily vernacular.
Yeah. So then Vernon has to he has his second internal crisis here where he does the math here, and Harry says, if he doesn't hear from me, he might start thinking something's wrong. And I love this is Vernon's actual thoughts. It's if he tried to stop Harry writing to Sirius would think Harry was being mistreated. If he told Harry he couldn't go to the Quidditch World Cup, Harry would write and tell Sirius, who would know Harry was being mistreated. And that line right there is what should drive you crazy, because it means that Vernon is aware he is mistreating Harry.
Yes, he just doesn't want someone to know.
Right, yes.
Yes. So there was only one thing for Uncle Vernon to do. Harry could see the conclusion forming in his uncle's mind, as though the great mustache face were transparent. Harry tried not to smile, to keep his own face as blank as possible. And then, well, all right then. You can go to this ruddy, this stupid, this World Cup thing.
Yeah.
As if you don't know what a World Cup thing is.
I know, right? Like you're aware of the World Cup. Like
you live in England.
Yeah, you live in England. It's kind of, you could tell it's a big deal. You writing down these Weasleys, they had to pick you up, mind.
I haven't got time to go dropping you off all over the country.
Even this is kind of surprising. Like he's upset that an envelope with too many stamps came to the house, and he's like saying he wants them to come here. Like in his effort to like regain control of the situation, he almost like overlooks the fact that wizards will be at his house then.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he like, again, you go back to the listening into the windows thing. It's like you're worried that somebody's going to hear a word that they don't know what means and then jump to like major conclusions. But in the meantime, you want the Weasleys, who are an all wizard family
With red hair,
to show up at their front door.
Yeah.
As if.
Yeah.
That's not how they're entering.
Not how they're gonna come in.
Nope. Let's see here. So then Harry's like, okay then.
Okay then, great.
He had to fight the urge to jump in the air, and whoop, he was going. He was going to the Weasleys. He was going to watch the Quidditch World Cup.
Heck yeah. Super fun, super fun. I love then he's, heads back up to his room to finish writing the letter, runs into Dudley, says, "That was an excellent breakfast, wasn't it? I feel really full, don't you?" Just like works in a nice taunt on his cousin there.
Not so bad, not so bad. Who was listening at the door.
You're right.
So, I mean, like, he may have heard the word Quidditch.
Yeah, he was like, what was that?
What does that mean? Am I living with a wizard?
Can I eat it?
All right, let's see. The first thing that Harry sees upon entering his room is that Hedwig is back. She's sitting in her cage with her enormous amber eyes and clicking her beak in a way that meant that she was annoyed about something. We're going to get a lot of personality from Hedwig in the next couple paragraphs here.
We absolutely are. Yeah. The noble bird.
The noble bird of Hedwig. Let's see here.
Yeah, so he gets the letter from Ron and says, "Harry, Dad got the tickets," which just near miss. Again, like they almost didn't get them.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
But he does specify that it's going to be Ireland versus Bulgaria, which at the very least, Ireland is set up in Prisoner of Azkaban. I think that when we're talking about the Firebolt, they say that the Ireland national team just ordered a complete set for them. So it's kind of like, haha,
there
we
you go.
Like we have known that Ireland was in a strong position to succeed since the last book. So that's kind of fun. And then I do they specify that they don't know how fast Muggle Post is. So he decided to send this particular note with Pig.
Pig, which we don't get an explanation for right now.
Yes, Harry's looking at this like tiny little gray fluffy bird being like, why on earth would you call that particular creature Pig?
I know. And then I love that Ron goes on to explain that the entire fiasco with the overstamped letter is all just a facade, and it doesn't matter what they say, we're coming to get you because you can't miss the World Cup.
Yes, yeah. So I love all of the phrasing that he has in here. We're coming to get you whether the Muggles like it or not. You can't miss the World Cup. Only Mom and Dad reckon it's better it's better if we pretend to ask their permission first.
Which means like even Molly and Arthur are in on it. They're like, yeah, no, we're getting him. Don't you worry, Ron.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. He's coming with us.
Yeah.
If they say yes, send Pig back with your answer pronto and we'll come and get you at 5 o'clock on Sunday. If they say no, send Pig back pronto and we'll come and get you on 5 o'clock on Sunday anyway.
I know. I love that.
That was like one of those lines that I feel like informed my personal sense of humor, where it's never too much to be like exceedingly redundant.
Yes.
When it comes to delivering a piece of comedy.
Yes.
It's like yes.
Over redundancy is a wonderful form of comedy for sure.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
And then we get the notification that Hermione is arriving this afternoon. Percy started work at the Department of International Magical Cooperation, which is just another piece of trivia. But I also highlighted that because last year in Ron's letter and Hermione's letter, we also got an update about Percy, which is that he had been made head boy. And Ron's letter is like, his badge came in the mail last week, and then he gets a letter from Hermione who's like, did you hear Percy got head boy? Ron doesn't seem very happy about it. And I'm like, it's kind of interesting that these letters, like with as many siblings as he has, always like it seemed to include like a little detail about Percy in particular.
Right.
Like, why that?
Why that? No updates about like Fred or George, who are like developing, like, why isn't there a line? It's like, yeah, Percy started work, the Department of International Magical Cooperation. Don't mention anything about abroad while you're here. And it feels like he'd be like, Fred and George have been making really cool candy.
I can't wait for you to see them.
Don't bring it up around Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Yeah. And so, but I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. Percy, I think, is an interesting one to bring back up again. And I don't know, maybe this is like another one of those things, although Charlie is barely in the story at all. So there's that. But like, maybe it's just like to make sure that like this character who's been like established isn't just sort of like written off the page a little bit. Because it does seem like it's going to be hard to like maintain his importance as we go forward. But I have frequently held the argument that starting now, Percy could potentially be under the Imperious Curse, because we're going to have Percy be like a real pain, even more so than he has been, basically now all the way through the Battle of Hogwarts. So now it's something to look out for.
Now something to look out for. Yeah. When could he not be acting of his own accord?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. He's certainly going to be very pompous, and he will manage to stick around. Like, he'll start showing up for like the judging and stuff.
Yes, indeed. Yep. Let's see here. So then Harry has to holler, "Calm down," at the small owl, twittering madly, and Harry could only assume was pride at having delivered the letter to the right person. I think this is almost just like, this owl is almost like the like personification of like Colin Creevy.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it, right?
It's like,
very
yes.
overexcitable.
Yes. So then I do sort of love the little tidbit here, which is just basically the challenge associated with Harry folding up the note very small and attempting to tie it to the tiny owl's leg as it hopped on the spot with the excitement, because soon he will also send information back to Sirius, and Hedwig will stand unusually still, as though determined to show him how a real post owl should behave.
Right, exactly. Hedwig's like, well, I cannot stand for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because when it's Hedwig's layers of superiority, it's like I can sort of be like, all right, I'm in.
Okay, yeah, right.
Because I love Hedwig.
Right, yeah, Hedwig is great. I didn't really pick up on this, but he hemmed and hawed all last night about what he was going to write to Sirius, but I guess he didn't actually get to send the letter, because now he adds the postscript that if you want to contact me, I'll be at my friend Ron Weasley's for the rest of the summer. His dad's got to take a Quidditch World Cup, which are like, does Sirius always know exactly where Harry is all the time, like, to send him the letters? I don't know.
I mean, he must.
Yeah.
Like, I think, maybe.
I don't know.
But I mean, that kind of goes back. You sort of brought it up in the last chapter, how like owl magic works.
Yeah, like they just sort of like they understand the connection between names and the wizards who own them or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. But it also does seem like Harry is going to specify to Hedwig, like, after you deliver this, I'll be at Ron's.
Right.
It's almost like Harry is informing Hedwig, like, I will be changing locations myself. Go there instead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the next line. She'll be at Ron's when you get back. She nipped his finger affectionately. Then with a soft swooshing noise, she spread her enormous wings, which is funny because I don't ever think of Hedwig as being enormous.
Yeah, me neither.
But I looked this up. Snowy owls are the largest owl in North America.
Oh, really?
Yes, by weight, I think, at least. Maybe not by wingspan. But their wingspan is between 4 and 5 feet.
Oh, wow.
So rather large.
Man, that is big.
Yeah, right?
That's a big bird.
It's a big bird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Harry watched her fly out of sight, crawled under his bed, wrenched up the loose floorboard, and pulled out a large chunk of birthday cake.
I like to think he doesn't have like a knife. He's just like free-handing the chunks of cake.
1,000%. That's what I'm picturing here.
Yeah.
Yep. And I like this too, because I think we even have a chapter like this. I'm trying to think of going back to when it is. Maybe it's Prisoner of Azkaban, but Harry has like a nice moment at the Dursleys. But it says, he sat there on the floor eating it, savoring the happiness that was flooding through him. He had cake and Dudley had nothing but grapefruit. It was a bright summer's day. He would be leaving Privet Drive tomorrow. His scar felt perfectly normal again, and he was going to watch the Quidditch World Cup. It was hard just now to feel worried about anything, even Lord Voldemort.
Yes.
And this is a very nice contrast to where Harry was in the last chapter, where he wakes up from the dream and he is looking at the Flying with the Cannons book. And there's a line that says, even Quidditch, in Harry's opinion, the best sport in the world, couldn't distract him at the moment. And now it's like he's basically saying, like, it was hard just now to feel worried about anything, even Lord Voldemort.
I know. I was making note of that as well, because it's like, Yeah, like I'm glad we brought that up earlier because, like, yeah, don't forget that Harry is coming out of like that very emotional, like worrisome dream about Voldemort, where he's like maybe seen him murder somebody, like maybe he's like gaining power or whatever. And like you're right, by the end of this chapter though, like his mood has been saved, like he's been able to turn it around, and like where in the moment it felt like terrible, now he is at a place just hours later where he is not concerned about Voldemort. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I think it speaks to the power of love and friendship. Which,
exactly. Yeah.
Like the key themes of the whole story.
Yeah, right. So it's like I was trying to list out like what brings Harry's mood entirely around. And it's like a couple of things. Like one is like I think courage. Like he is able to summon the courage to stand up to the Dursleys because he actually now knows he has the support of an adult out in the real world who can like, you know, he can lean on even just a tiny little bit, and like the ability to put that into action, like I think like bolsters him a lot. And then there's friendship, just sort of like all of the letters he gets from the Weasleys and Ron in the chapter. And then sports as well. Like Quidditch does come back to be like more powerful than like Voldemort here. Because like sports, especially in this book where we have the Triwizard Tournament and the Quidditch World Cup, are going to be like a much wider metaphor for like unity despite having different opinions, and the value of community, and like how the community of wizards that just love Quidditch in general is like greater than the sum of its parts, in which you might have individual support for specific teams,
right,
and stuff like that.
Yes. And I think even the like with the Triwizard Tournament, like, you know, Hermione reads it best, I think, where she's like, the whole point of this is international cooperation. It's to get to know people from other schools. It's like, sure, there is a central competition that brings this whole thing together, and the idea of competition is adversaries, but at the same rate, it's like this idea of unity is really at the core of it, and that is something that like Hogwarts itself is trying desperately. You know, the Sorting Hat is trying desperately to communicate this message that we are stronger united than we are divided.
Exactly. So like in just the past like in the first 3 chapters here, it's very like off page and intangible, but like in this like light way, like courage and friendship and unity have like defeated Lord Voldemort in Harry's mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So I think this is really, really good thematic writing and kind of perfect. Like I think it to me, like especially when I got to that last line, I was like, it's so incredible because, and we made a big deal about the line in the last chapter about how even Quidditch like wasn't going to be enough to distract him, and it's the frustration that this is like what Voldemort is stealing from Harry is that life that any kid should be entitled to have.
Right.
You know, and it's like, okay, but here we go. You know, it's like you put all the pieces together, even uniting the pieces of the positive forces that Harry, you know, can summon.
Yeah. From otherwise his existence in a fairly dark place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's enough to overcome. So boom, take that, Voldemort. End of chapter.
Yeah.
Do you have a review for us?
I sure do, Ben. I sure do.
Excellent.
Let me pull it up right here for you. Today's review comes from Spikes25.
Hi, Spikes25.
Here we go. They say, "Hey, brother, this podcast is brilliant. Hold on. I scrolled away." Hey, brother, this podcast is brilliant. It's honestly just like sitting and having a conversation. I've read and listened to the books multiple times. It's great to hear not only some of the same insights I've had, but things I haven't thought of. I've been a Carlin Bros fan for years, but stayed away from the podcast. That was a mistake. Now I'm binging the heck out of it. I do have a thought and would like your opinion on it. What if James didn't stop Snape from going down the tunnel when Sirius told him where Lupin went every month?
Oh, okay. So the idea here is that it has been established that James saved Snape's life.
Yes.
Which means that if James doesn't interject in this situation, then Lupin would be violently dangerous.
Right.
Snape would likely be killed.
Likely die or become a werewolf himself.
Die or become. I'm going to go with death.
I'm going to go with death.
Because I feel like what's established is that James saved his life. So it feels like the opposite of that would be Snape's death. I think it would be terrible for so many reasons.
So many reasons. It feels like it's probably the end of the Marauders right there.
Hard stop, because
Yeah.
I don't think that Lupin. I think Lupin would separate himself from everyone forever.
Yeah, like he would bear that shame and consider it his fault forever.
Yes,
Even though it will have been Sirius's.
definitely would have been serious.
I don't think James would have been cool with it either.
No,
Obviously, we know he's not because he stops him.
because he stops him. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And I think that the fallout that it would cause in Lupin alone would be enough for James to see Sirius's act as a betrayal.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that James and Sirius's relationship would maintain, which would, be defeating for James and Sirius.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a world where Sirius would join the Death Eaters. I don't think that would.
I don't think that would happen either, but let's see. But like Snape won't join the Death Eaters, obviously, because he'll be dead.
Because he'll be dead, yep.
Right.
Peter likely would, because if anything,
Right.
the one thing that was barring him from joining them sooner probably is that the Marauders are the bigger kids on the playground.
Right. And now if they're not friends, then that's probably just sort of it for him.
That's probably it for him. He would have nobody else left to attach to.
Right.
Um,
I mean, do you think does Sirius get I don't know, not like his wand is probably snapped for this, right?
Yeah, he'd be expelled almost certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if Hagrid's wand is snapped because it is assumed a monster he was keeping killed Myrtle,
Yep.
then if Sirius led Snape to a monster attack that killed Snape,
Yep.
it feels like their fate is the same.
It definitely feels that way.
Maybe he's too young to be sent to Azkaban, but I think his wand is definitely snapped.
Do you think Dumbledore gets dismissed as headmaster?
Oh, well,
Well, I mean, my argument would be possibly leaning towards yes, because it's Dumbledore. Lupin specifically outlines that it's Dumbledore who makes the decision to permit him to come to school.
right.
The professors, when he is teaching there, know that he's a werewolf, but no one else does know that information.
Right.
So whether or not the parents of the school have been informed that this has taken place, whether or not they know that their children are attending school with a werewolf, it's the parents' prejudice, but then reinforced by the fact that someone died.
Yeah.
Despite the precautions, which then, whenever precautions fall short, they're always deemed insufficient because that's
Right.
how it works.
Right.
It's like, would people come after Dumbledore and say, why did you let this happen in the first place? Because
Right.
you've endangered all of our children and staff and...
Right. Because you're right. Presumably none of the other students or parents or anything are aware that there's a werewolf at the school.
Presumably.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sort of the whole point there. So let's see. I have to imagine, big falling out between James and Sirius.
Almost certainly the other kids don't know because it takes the Marauders themselves who are with him. He's lying to them about where he's going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lily even says to Snape, I know your theory about him or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah. So the other students don't know.
Yeah, they don't know.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that whilst Remus would blame himself indefinitely, that I feel like James would stick by Remus.
I think he would stick by Remus, but we know how Remus can be with this, where he puts a lot of burden on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's the worst possible case outcome has happened.
Right.
So, it's not that I don't think that James would stick by Remus. It's that I think Remus would just exile himself.
I mean, quite possible. It doesn't seem like he'd be allowed to continue going to school.
You know what's weird is that the outcome of this going the other way is really bad. And I always underestimate the importance of this particular plot detail completely.
I know.
It always feels kind of silly. Something almost happened a long time ago. How important is that really? But when you dissect it, it's like a lot of bad stuff would have happened.
A lot of bad stuff would have happened. It makes you wonder, do Lily and James even get together? Is there not that? I mean, That, for the sake of the story, feels like it would happen anyway, and I'm not sure why. I don't think that is affected because I think this would deflate James quite a bit.
I think it would deflate James quite a bit. It would bring him down to earth in a huge way a lot faster.
Right.
And then in the meantime, it's like James wouldn't have had any involvement other than being distraught over the outcome. Lily would be distraught over the outcome because Snape would be dead.
Right. But so if James is no longer friends with Sirius, which feels like it has a certain like Godric Salazar flavor to it.
A little bit.
Because there's 4 of them and whatever.
Yep.
But I don't know what that would mean. And if he's not friends with him and Remus isn't at school anymore, then is like I imagine he would still be friends with Peter.
I guess that's true. I mean, it's not like James dislikes Peter.
Right. Like, I mean, he obviously entrusts him to be the secret keeper. So it's probably like Peter becomes his like de facto like best friend for a while, which then also means he probably just still becomes the secret keeper, which means all the other bad stuff happens.
Yep.
Except that, well, I can even see Sirius still trying to track him down.
I mean,
like in an effort to like make up for what he's done or something.
That's true. That's an interesting way to.
But without Snape, does Voldemort even know about the prophecy?
Without Snape, does Voldemort even know about the prophecy? Oh man, it's a big question.
Because if he doesn't know the prophecy, he never even attacks them.
Yep.
Right?
It's a good point. I mean, it's rather serendipitous that Snape happens to be there to overhear the prophecy in the first place, which draws into some question layers of inevitability, like fate. Like, I mean, if the prophecy happens, is that a force unto itself that means that somebody will overhear it?
I don't know. Well, not all the prophecies in the Hall of Prophecy come true, so I don't think so.
I know, but this one's pretty vitally important.
It is vitally important, but I don't know. You're right. Like, just because it happens, like Dumbledore will have heard it, but like without Snape to suggest to Voldemort to spare Lily, like, would he offer to spare Lily? And then if he doesn't spare Lily, does Harry just die? But like, why would he attack them in the first place? Other than that, like, they're just like order members, you know?
Yep. Okay, that's true. So I feel like Sirius has to play some type of ongoing role in this equation.
You're right. Yeah.
Because I don't think Sirius would ever stop. I mean, I think Sirius loves James like wholly, completely.
Yeah.
He would regret having done this because it lost James.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? Okay, so it's a little different. I was gonna say it's kind of like I was gonna try and compare it to Hagrid, where like Dumbledore keeps Hagrid on despite the accusation of murder, but in Hagrid's case, Hagrid truly is innocent, and in Sirius's case, he would not be innocent.
He would not be innocent.
So, like, would Dumbledore be like, well, let me go ahead and back pocket the Sirius Blackfellow and, like, try and help him out of a jam? Or would he be like, yeah, that was a pretty bad call, Sirius?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because, I mean, I could see it happening.
You know what? I do think it still would, because, like, whether or not...
This is what happens with Hagrid and Newt.
Right.
You know, they're both expelled.
They get expelled.
They both
Dumbledore.
become agents of Dumbledore.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like, just because it didn't happen doesn't mean Sirius didn't do it. And Sirius wasn't the one to correct it.
Yeah.
And Dumbledore still trusts him. Right?
Right.
So it's like, James is the one to correct it. Sirius does it either way.
True.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So, Sirius
probably becomes the double agent because Regulus is also on track. Right?
Sirius probably becomes the double agent. You're right. He's very well positioned as a Black family member
to do that.
Yes. And in like an effort to, I can even see Dumbledore manipulating the situation, being like, you made a bad decision, like, and he's like, you know, let me make it up to you or whatever.
Yeah.
And like the way he does it is by like pledging. So okay, yeah, that's what happens. I think so. Sirius becomes the double agent.
But so then, so then the question there is, how much is figure outable? Because for the most part, people don't understand why Harry survived, which means that it's not common knowledge that it's sacrificial protection that saves Harry. So it's like, I'm trying to decide if it would make sense to feed the prophecy to Voldemort on purpose so that those things happen, but that seems crazy.
I know, like, why would Dumbledore tell Sirius to do that? You know, could Sirius still overhear it in some way? Like maybe he's just sort of like hanging out in the Hog's Head because Dumbledore wants him there for whatever reason, you know.
I mean, that would make sense. We know Aberforth is a member of the First Order of the Phoenix. It would be close to Hogwarts.
Right.
We know that people can take up lodging in the Hog's Head.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't hate a scenario, and that's where the obviously the appointment with Trelawney is happening.
Yeah.
Maybe the prophecy itself is different.
Oh, maybe the prophecy is just different.
Yeah.
Under these circumstances.
Right, because it would change things a little bit, and
maybe he doesn't ask him, or maybe
because the prophecy must know it because it says that the part that Voldemort doesn't hear is that he will mark whoever as his equal, and that means the prophecy knows that the sacrificial protection will happen.
Right. Okay. How about this though? Somehow Voldemort still has to learn about the prophecy in order for the rest of the events to happen. But how about the person who was asked to be spared is James instead of Lily because it's Sirius.
Oh, yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense.
That's crazy.
That is crazy pants. Yeah.
Whew, very different story.
Very different story.
Man, what a great question. Who asked this?
Yeah, this is a really good sticking point. This was Spike's 25.
Spike's 25.
Yeah.
Fantastic question.
Really good one. Yes, we are really down the rabbit hole now.
I know, yeah. We've gone way under the Whomping Willow with this one.
This is how it happens, though.
I know. That's very fun.
Yeah.
That's a very fun question.
Yeah.
This would be, I mean, I feel like I'm hesitant to dive into another very long What If series, but I feel
like it could be like a one-off.
Like a single episode type, like What If, because it feels fun to explore it. I love the thought, because I mean, I even said it without knowing the conclusion you would come to, but I think that Sirius loves James innately,
especially if he has like reason to try and like repay him.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Definitely. So lots of interesting new dominoes must fall, but that's a really good question. That's a really interesting one. Okay, something to think further on in the future. So keep a lookout for that episode.
I can see. Yeah. Okay. My mind's still going.
I know.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Through the Gryffindor. Make sure you join us next week for Back to the Burrow Chapter 4 here on Through the Gryffindor.
Today's episode was edited by Ethan Edghill. Vaishon Brandon does our art. Catherine Stein is our production manager, and the show is hosted by me and Jonathan Carlin.